Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Louise Minchin and Dan Walker.
Our headlines for you at 6 o'clock. All travellers entering the UK could face mandatory COVID tests after they arrive to stop the spread of new variants.
Over 70s in England who haven't been vaccinated are told to contact the NHS.
Donald Trump on trial again. The first ever impeachment of a former president begins today.
The bulk of childcare and less secured jobs. Good morning. Why women are suffering more from the economic impact of COVID. MPs say there's a gender gap in support. The government says it's doing whatever it takes.
The UK's first football hate crime police officer says prosecution is the only option now. The referee Mike Dean asks not to be involved in a Premier League match this weekend after death threats to his family.
I get to wear a high vis and be very bossy and go, "Oi!" No, just to welcome people, as I'm about to do. Good morning, sir. Welcome.
From Lord of the Manor to vaccine centre volunteer, Downton star Hugh Bonneville on his new role on the COVID frontline.
Good morning. At the moment, there is currently 60 centimetres of lying snow in Braemar. There are further snow showers in the forecast today. Not all of us seeing them. Still gusty winds with a significant wind chill, so feeling bitter. But I'll have all the details later in the programme.
To Tuesday the 9th of February, our main story for you. All travellers entering the UK will be tested for coronavirus after they arrive, under plans which are to be announced shortly.
They still have to provide a negative COVID test before they travel and either self-isolate or quarantine on arrival, depending where they've come from. Our reporter Charlotte Wright has more details on this and all the latest developments in the fight against the virus.
Just some of the millions who have now been vaccinated against COVID-19. But while these people were told to wait to be called up, now in England, those over 70 who haven't yet been given an appointment are being urged to contact the NHS themselves, online or by calling 119.
My advice to you is very simple. Do not delay. Have the vaccine that will protect you against the current threat. And don't worry, you can be revaccinated.
It follows concerns about the performance of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine after a small study found it gave minimal protection against mild disease from the South Africa variant. But scientists say that shouldn't deter people from getting a jab in the UK, where the dominant strain of the virus is different.
I don't think it's an immediate concern, and every bit of immunity to this virus that you can accumulate is a good thing, because it will, in all likelihood, reduce the severity of disease if you do catch this virus, even if it is from one of the overseas strains or a strain which has acquired some resistance.
But the virus is changing here too. Extra community testing, known as surge testing, will start in parts of South Manchester today, after a mutation of the Kent variant was discovered in 4 people in 2 separate households. Experts say it's to be expected.
In itself, we're not particularly worried. We think, based on good tests that are done in test tubes, that the vaccine will still work, perhaps just not quite as well as previously, but still good enough to protect people from severe disease. That means going into hospital and from dying.
Meanwhile, it's been announced that all passengers arriving in the UK will now be required to take a COVID test during their isolation. Measures the Department for Health says will provide a further level of protection for the country, and another sign that the pandemic's journey is far from over. Charlotte Wright, BBC News.
And as ever here on Breakfast, we will bring you more information and analysis of those issues throughout the programme, including questions to our medical editor, Fergus Walsh, who's answering your questions at 8:30. Send some more in if you'd like to.
Yeah, BBC Breakfast at bbc.co.uk is our email address this morning. Now, campaigners say care homes in England must be helped to reopen to visitors by March.
Age UK is among 6 organisations asking for the return of what they call meaningful indoor visits, as many residents have now spent almost a year in isolation.
The impeachment trial of Donald Trump starts in the US Senate today. He's charged with inciting a mob of his supporters to attack the Capitol building last month.
His lawyers have said Mr. Trump will not testify and that he did not spark the violence. Our Washington correspondent Barbara Pletasher reports.
For the first time in modern history, America's peaceful transfer of power was shaken. The Capitol stormed by armed supporters of the president to stop Congress from declaring his election defeat. The ragged insurrection jolted lawmakers into action. Members of the lower chamber, including some Republicans, charged Donald Trump with inciting the riot.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
President Trump used fiery language that day. His lawyers say he was simply exercising his right to free speech.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
But Democrats plan to use his own words against him. They say the evidence is all out there, live streamed and live tweeted. And they will present it in vivid color for the nation to see.
No one will be able to avert their gaze from what Mr. Trump said and did, and the consequences of his actions.
5 people died during the riot. Here, a memorial service for a Capitol police officer who was killed. And lawmakers on both sides of the aisle feared for their lives.
And then I just start to hear these yells of, "Where is she? Where is she?"
Like hell, I'm going to let a bunch of domestic terrorists interfere with our job to protect and defend the Constitution.
Do you solemnly swear?
It looks almost certain, though, that Senate Republicans won't vote to convict. On the day they were sworn in as jurors, most of them backed Mr. Trump, calling the trial unconstitutional.
Democrats are wasting the nation's time on a partisan vendetta against a man no longer in office.
The man may have left the White House, but he's still a power broker in the party, with a tight grip on the grassroots.
And he's not coming back here to testify to this fortress Capitol, still under heavy guard to protect members of Congress. Republicans are clearly eager to turn this unhappy page and move on. But Democrats are determined to hold Donald Trump to account for the history books, if nothing else. Barbara Platt-Usher, BBC News, Washington.
Police in Myanmar have fired water cannon on protesters who've taken to the streets for a 4th consecutive day of demonstrations.
They're calling for the restoration of democracy after the military seized power last week and arrested many leading democratic politicians. The military's banned gatherings of more than 5 people.
A mission to Mars is due to orbit the red planet later today.
The Hope spacecraft still has one of the most dangerous parts of its journey ahead, when it needs to brake for just the right amount of time to avoid crashing into Mars or missing altogether.
Sounds pretty important, doesn't it?
Technical.
Yeah.
Our global science correspondent, who knows more, Rebecca Morell, reports.
A first for the United Arab Emirates. This was the moment last summer when it sent its spacecraft to Mars. Now it's almost reached its destination. But the probe, called Hope, has a critical manoeuvre ahead, getting into orbit. It needs to approach Mars at just the right speed and angle. If anything goes wrong, the entire mission will be lost. The spacecraft will study the atmosphere to solve a big mystery of how Mars transformed from a planet with water like Earth to the dry, dusty world it is today. Until now, the UAE has only sent satellites into Earth orbit. Arriving at the red planet will be a huge leap.
To know that there is a spacecraft that has gone from this region further than any man-made object has ever gone, that is hurtling towards a small pink dot that you also see in the sky. I can't describe the feeling nor the thought process, but I never thought that this was possible.
The spacecraft has one shot to get into orbit. If it succeeds, history will be made, firmly establishing the United Arab Emirates as a new space power. Rebecca Morell, BBC News.
And we'll be talking about all of that a little bit later here on Breakfast.
And if you think it's cold here, well, spare a thought for our Canadian friends, some of whom have seen temperatures between -35 and -50 degrees Celsius over the past few nights.
It has, though, made this possible. That was boiling water being thrown into the air. And look at it, being instantly turned into ice crystals because of the extreme temperatures. It has to be around -42 degrees Celsius or lower for that to be possible, so no point trying it at home.
Oh,
and probably quite dangerous as well.
That is beautiful, isn't it?
Wonderful.
But your eye freezes up at those sort of temperatures, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Here we've seen some frosty scenes across the UK in recent days as another beast from the east has been biting.
We haven't quite got those pictures from Canada, but we do have some of these. It's created the opportunity for some sheep-powered sledging in the Derbyshire Dales. Look at that. Sort of bus on the back there.
As we can see from scenes in Southend-on-Sea, it's never too cold for an ice cream.
I fully agree with that.
Do you?
Have an ice cream in any weather whatsoever.
I disagree with that.
It was snowing in Sheffield the other day. I took the dog for a walk, and the ice cream van was there in the park in this sort of blizzard
I
condition.
appreciate they need to, sell our ice cream.
Exactly.
It's
I'm
just
helping
wrong.
the economy, Louise.
It's wrong.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.